If the killers reveal the names of those who sent them, then Max will show mercy and kill them very quickly. He doesn't like to wait, so as soon as he suggested this option, he immediately killed one of the mercenaries. He gave one last chance, but the Sicario refused to talk about his boss and suffered a terrible death. After the deed was done, it was time to think. Could a union of aristocrats be behind all this? If they really started sending assassins, then they need to go to the palace immediately. That's exactly what he did. As soon as the sun rose in the sky and illuminated the road, he immediately set out on the road. Their journey took a long time. For 2 weeks now, they have been driving non-stop towards the palace. During this time, many attempts have been made on them, but so far Max has been able to cope with any danger. Even an entire army cannot withstand such a number of attacks. It is not surprising that the baby can hardly stand. She is completely tired and exhausted, but refuses to complain about life and endures like a holy priest. Soon they found shelter and can now rest a little. Max immediately brought medicine for Liz. He understands that it is very difficult for her, but promises that soon it will all end and they will be safe. Now, for the first time, he thought about taking a short break from travel for the common good. He is tired of constantly fighting off the Sicario, and besides, he clearly understands that Lisa may soon die from overwork. Apparently, he was so tired of everything that was happening that he no longer had the strength to hide his feelings. These are the very feelings that played out in him from the moment he first met this girl. He succumbed to temptation and kissed her, feeling all his helplessness before the powerful power of love. After that, he got up and left her resting on the bed, as if nothing special had happened. The next day, they went for a little walk in the fresh air. This is a good opportunity to relax and clear your head of bad thoughts, as well as get closer to each other. Max feels comfortable next to Lisa, but bad thoughts constantly creep into his head. He can't leave her alone because they are constantly being attacked, so he needs to be patient. He noticed that she was especially attentive to something specific. Apparently, the girl saw desserts that she had dreamed of trying all her life, but never had the opportunity. Max immediately fulfilled her dream, bought a lot of sweets, and began to feed her right on the street. It was like caring for a small child, but Lisa had never really tried candy. This is the first time she has eaten something so sweet. With each new day, life opens up to her with a new palette of colors. She also decided to show care and feed her owner, as a sign of respect and gratitude for everything he does. Max, apparently, was not at all ready for such an attitude. He was also not used to showing concern. She seems to think it's a sweet gesture because she does the same and smiles sincerely back. It seemed that nothing would ruin their day, but after a few seconds, Liz's face dimmed. She tilted her head down and immediately removed the smile from her face because she felt that the blood was flowing from her body again. This had happened before, and she didn't know how to behave around Max, but he quickly understood everything. The Marquis was not taken aback. He took off his cloak and section on her, as if protecting her from the eyes of the whole world. She tried to stop him and said that the clothes might get dirty, but he didn't even want to listen to it. If earlier the Marquis only occasionally showed care and warm feelings, now these emotions have completely taken over his consciousness. He asked her not to worry or worry about anything, because when she is next to him, everything will be fine. All this time, it seemed to him that she was a child, but now he realized that in front of him was a full-fledged woman. Max looked after her very well and made sure she felt fine. And the only thing that outrages me is that Lisa constantly suffers. Sometimes she doesn't talk about her real feelings. She is already accustomed to living in this style. But this does not mean that she needs to live her whole life this way. Now Max would gladly kill a few Sicarios, because that would be the only thing that would distract him. They could not stay in one place for long, and therefore constantly tried to continue their route. Soon, they finally reached their destination, and now a new chapter in life begins. Max wanted to calmly pass through the gate, but something unheard of happened, because the knights stopped his path. They did not understand that the legendary Marquis Mark Warren was standing in front of them, who carried out the order of the emperor. As soon as they heard these words, they immediately bowed to the legendary warrior. They are honored to meet this commander-in-chief, who has achieved outstanding victories on the battlefield. The capital always blooms and smells. Not only a large number of just such people come here, but also all the aristocrats. The Marquis was received as expected. He felt respect and awe from everyone around him. He also did not forget to ask for full care and attention to his maid, and hinted that this was very important. When Max walked into the meeting room, Lisa stayed behind and only wished him good luck in a quiet voice. Of course, everyone around immediately became interested in what exactly her relationship was with the Marquise. Lisa cannot speak fully, so she quickly realized that she needed to write a short note. At that moment, a tall woman approached them and said that Lisa was very valuable to the Marquise, so she should be respected. Apparently, this woman completely forgot to teach her servants to follow the rules of etiquette. It is not for nothing that the Marquise is called the album of the battlefield, because only his glance is enough to terrify his opponent. Probably only the maid feels his kindness, and everyone else knows him as a tough and cold warrior. The fame of the Marquis went beyond the borders of the empire. Legends had already been created about him and made him a hero of the nation. After completing the order, Max immediately returned to the emperor to personally notify him of his success. In the eyes of the emperor, Max has not changed at all, but now he is no longer a marquise, because it is more correct to call him a duke. Max considers all the emperor's orders fair and is ready to fulfill his any request. The emperor asked Max to get up and come to him, because they should forget about formalities. The commander-in-chief of the army has long known about the emperor's illness. Apparently, this man has very little time left to live. Soon he will completely fade away. As his health deteriorated, the power of the aristocrats increased and his position weakened. The emperor tried to place the crown prince on the throne, but he is not able to rule a large empire. Max asked to be given the opportunity to sort out these problems, but it would be better if the prince did it. If he fails in his task, he will show that he is unworthy of the crown, and then there will be no regrets left. Rumors about the return of the legendary Marquis Warren quickly spread throughout the capital. Even the deaf heard these stories. Everyone knows that the war hero has returned, and now everyone is trying to see him, at least from afar. Women began to go crazy, because I know that the Marquise is still not married, and now he will have time for this. Not only a famous and successful man, but also a real handsome man, with broad shoulders and tall stature. Everyone around tried to congratulate him on his victory, and, at least a little, touch the greatness of the hero. The girls invited him to a party and showed him signs of attention in every possible way. They tried to capture his heart, but in response, they saw only an empty look and lack of interest. They all infuriate him, and the only thing that interests him is the condition of Lisa, who is now all alone. This is the first time she has been alone with strangers, so he feels completely awkward. Taking a closer look, he saw that a familiar man had entered the banquet hall. The Marquis immediately recognized Duke Lightman, whom he had known for more than 10 years. Next to him is his son Mano, a younger version of his father, who still looks like the Duke. The heir to the title of Duke of the Lightman family is known for his skills as a high-level knight. Only a few know that there is an insidious scoundrel hiding inside him, but Max knows about this and tries to avoid meeting him. As soon as he tried to rid himself of the possibility of unpleasant encounters, he immediately heard a familiar voice. This was a girl who was unhappy that the hero of the occasion was leaving. Only when he came a little closer did he recognize her, because in front of him is Rain Lightman. She is quite beautiful, has a good character, and has a high status in society. The Marquis has heard a lot about this girl. She is even called the flower of the empire, and this clearly has its reasons. Max wants to ignore the aristocrat's daughter because he knows that Lightman was involved in the attack on him. But he also understands that the number of attacks can increase if he continues to provoke his opponent. Max said that he already needs to return home. Apparently, he doesn't want to keep Liz waiting. After saying goodbye to Rain, he said that he hoped to meet her tomorrow, although of course this was a blatant lie. Meanwhile, Rain was very excited to meet him and decided to definitely get closer to the Marquise in the future. She also knows that her father is involved in the attack on him, although everything was disguised at the highest level. The father said that this banquet was a good opportunity to get closer to Max, and the daughter should not miss this chance. The lives of their family are at stake, so even if she doesn't like the Marquise, she still has to find the key to his heart. That's why Rain was forced to attend this party, and was surprised to see such an attractive guy. The matter seems rather risky to her, but she is definitely interested in making the Marquise her toy. On the second day of the banquet, Many aristocrats and children of influential parents gathered again. Time passes too slowly, and Rain Lightman can't wait to meet the Marquis. Thus, not only the second day of the banquet passed, but also the third day, and even the fourth. And they did not even meet. Rain could no longer hide her emotions. For her, it felt like a personal insult and defeat. She couldn't understand why he didn't come, because she always considered herself a special girl who was hard to resist. She turned to her assistant Charlotte and ordered her to bribe the servant Duke Warren in order to find out more about him. Soon Charlotte returned and said that Max spends all day long with the mute girl he brought with him. It was hard to believe, but it is actually true, and Charlotte was convinced of this from personal experience. She watched for several days and noticed that the Duke's maid almost never left her room. Rain immediately became furious. She couldn't allow some simple village girl to take over his heart. The girl decided to act in a cunning way and asked Charlotte whether she liked this dumb servant. Charlotte was very surprised by such a question. Her mistress had never asked her opinion before. Rain knows that Charlotte has long been in love with the Duke and has always dreamed of becoming his mistress. Rain advises her assistant not to miss this chance and take advantage of the moment to make her dream come true. There may not be a second chance, and once Charlotte makes her decision, she must immediately turn to Rain. This has become a difficult time for the servant. She must make a very difficult decision, on which a lot depends. She found it difficult to deal with her own emotions and was unsure about agreeing. She can deal with Lisa and stay with Max, and then they will live happily ever after, and no one will bother them. This was exactly her decision, because the girl is sure that nothing can save her, so she needs to act. The next morning, Lisa was learning to write, having made significant progress in her learning over the past few days. The doors to her room opened, and a maid ran into the room, screaming that they had serious problems. According to her, the Duke has just been wounded. He needs to immediately call a doctor and also take a bag of money. Lisa was very frightened and hoped in every possible way to help her owner, and did not even know what was happening. But she's still childishly naive. I can't even imagine that the world could be much tougher than she thinks. They walked along a dark corridor, although the owner was supposed to be at a banquet and should not have risked his life. Charlotte got angry and said that they need to hurry up. They can't walk so slowly. You need to take responsibility, otherwise the Duke risks dying, so you need to hurry. Lisa didn't want the owner to have problems because of her, so she trusted this girl in every possible way. They weren't in a hurry, but her soul was too restless not to pay attention to it. Meanwhile, Charlotte hoped that there would be enough money, and also that Lisa would go on a long journey. She hopes that after this trip no one will see Lisa, but this does not concern her. When they went outside, the most interesting things began, because a man appeared who took the money for himself. Apparently, he should also take Lisa with him, but at the last moment she broke free and started running. The criminals tried to hurry up and stop her before anyone saw everything that was happening on the street. It was at this moment that a huge owl attacked them, as if completely losing fear of people. This is an opportunity for a girl to break away from the persecution and feel safe at least for a second. It was very dark outside, so soon she caught herself over a branch and fell to the ground. Raising her head, she saw the silhouettes of two people who were in front of her and were trying to figure out the situation. Lisa was very frightened and did not even hide her tears, because she was completely confused about what was happening. It turned out that Duke Warren was in front of her, along with Rain Lightman. They probably decided to go out and get some fresh air during the banquet and heard a noise. Rain started asking the girls a bunch of different questions, and it was clear that she was unfriendly. Even more tears appeared on Lisa's face. She felt incredible pain, but not at all from her wounds. It came from realizing how good the two looked together and the way they looked at her dirty face. Max could not stand it. In an aggressive tone, he ordered Rain to stop immediately and forget about her questions. After that, he approached his maid to make sure that everything was fine with her. Max didn't even hesitate to hug her, and thereby demonstrate his feelings for the girl. He was trying to understand who exactly attacked her this evening, and Rain only now understood everything. She guessed that in front of her was the same maid who valued the Duke so much. In order not to arouse unnecessary suspicion, she said that she would immediately call her servants for help. It turned out that this was not necessary at all, because Max was ready to personally carry Liz to his chambers, in his arms. This angered the aristocrat's daughter even more, who considered herself more worthy than a dumb servant. Very soon, Lisa was safe and lying in her bed. Now she looks a little upset because she can't go to her owner. The girl is too weak, so she believes that she will cause him unnecessary trouble and cannot even explain the situation. She would really like to talk to him, but she has practically no skills, and this makes her suffer. When she tries to utter at least one word, her head immediately begins to spin, and darkness appears in her eyes. I immediately remember that same woman, beautiful and strong, who is ideal for the owner. Lisa realizes that she is not like that at all her hidden dreams are doomed to failure. Now she does not feel fidelity at all. It is rather a feeling of jealousy and reluctance to share her property with someone. When Max returned to his chambers, he found the servant in a very sad mood. He immediately approached and tried to understand what was happening, but realized that he was too careless. Lisa is very traumatized by this situation, and helping her mental health is a top priority right now. Lisa practically doesn't answer all the questions. She just hints that she's crying for no reason. Of course, it is obvious that this is a lie. She came up with an excuse so that Max would not worry. All these problems they've been facing lately are causing her too much discomfort. Even now, she thinks about him first and foremost, and at such moments, she looks especially beautiful. This long-awaited moment finally came again, the moment when the Duke could no longer contain his feelings. He looked at this beauty and thought about how sweet a kiss with her might seem. Lisa was very scared. She understands that this is not the first time, and now this can no longer be called an ordinary misunderstanding. She would like this to last longer, but it feels like Max regrets his action. She always felt much better. Somehow the owner hugs her, because she always likes to feel love. I never felt this feeling in my previous life, but now even this is becoming too little. Although she feels that she is no longer lonely, she becomes greedy, and at the same time, she is afraid of losing him. She becomes too strange around him, although Max does everything possible to make her feel comfortable. Their first meeting wasn't ideal, but over the past few years, they've both grown closer to each other. Her heart hurts terribly, and she does not understand her feelings at all, although everything seems quite obvious. Max was scared when he heard about her health problems. He cannot risk this girl. Apparently she likes him, and the pain in her heart is just a sign of emotions and not a health problem. In such moments of intimate conversations, she looks very sincere. You want to trust her. For the first time in her life, she feels that someone was able to reach her soul, and this scares her. Now Max must understand himself and understand whether he can feel anything after everything he has been through. He has been in a lot of wars and killed thousands of soldiers, and now he is not sure that he will be able to love. Lisa touched his hand and looked at him with a reassuring look. Apparently, this was a very strong act, which broke all the Duke's protective armor. He can no longer contain his true feelings, which means that he loves her too. Once the decision was made, there was no longer any point in denying oneself and denying oneself pleasure. Max understands that all this looks incredibly strange, but there is good news, because it will get even stranger further. Lisa felt incredible embarrassment. She had never been so ashamed in her life, although she had not done anything yet. Compared to hugs, she likes this situation much more, and she doesn't want to stop. The Duke warned that it would hurt a little, but it was not scary, and there was no need to cry. All this was just the beginning, but very soon, Lisa could not refuse this pleasure. Now she definitely won't be able to live without her owner, because she was hooked by an experienced fisherman. Max also understands that she is now in his power, but he too fell into her network. The night very quickly gave way to morning, and I must admit that this morning has been the best for many recent months. Max didn't expect anything like this from such an innocent person. It's a pity that they didn't meet each other earlier. Now he began to feel much better. He no longer needed to hide his true feelings and wear a mask. He even noticed that he didn't have nightmares at all when they slept together, although before that, nightmares were commonplace. As soon as Lisa woke up, she felt so ashamed that she couldn't even go to see him. Only after some time was she able to overcome herself and finally look into his eyes, and she immediately felt better. Probably for the first time, she saw him smile. This means that the owner is happy and they can stay together. Soon the servants reported that the bath was ready. He said that he did not need help and relieved them of their work. Lisa wanted to help, But it turned out that this was not necessary, and Max was ready to take on all the work. He understands that yesterday she was too tired and went through a lot of stress, so it's better not to stress at all today. So they went to the bathroom together. Although it was too difficult for Liz at first, it seemed to her that after yesterday, she was already accustomed to this attitude, but still her heart was too restless. Max, on the contrary, feels incredible. He has not experienced such a feeling of comfort for many years. Constant wars and battles made him too tough, as did the scars that were forever reflected on his body. It immediately becomes clear that he had to go through a lot. This is what strengthened his character and made him who he is. It's hard to imagine how painful it is for him to remember the past, but perhaps now he can finally live in the present. After all the morning procedures, it was time for breakfast and a little tea. Max looks too elegant and beautiful, even when he is just drinking tea, and this makes Liz embarrassed. And it seems that she does not suit and does not correspond to the Duke at all. He tries to think less about it. Sometimes you get the feeling that Max is only looking for a reason for unnecessary touches. Then perhaps these are just obsessive thoughts. Every day, Lisa feels more and more the emergence of her selfishness, signs of which she had never noticed before. After completing the morning rituals, they got dressed and went outside. And today, one can notice the beautiful weather. It's sunny all around, and there's a slight freshness of spring, an ideal time for walks in the fresh air. Max could no longer hide his real feelings, even despite the fact that there were many extra eyes around. Lisa feels awkward when people see her being carried around in their arms like a child, but it's time to get used to it. It was the perfect day to finally return home to Duke Max Warren's mansion. They have been waiting for him there for a long time, because he was supposed to return with the first rays of the sun, but he is seriously late. The person in charge of the mansion, Chancellor Jeremy Chloe Warren, is very excited about the upcoming meeting with the Master. Richard Chaser is also waiting for the Master. He is the commander of the Knights of the Army, and a very devoted servant. Richard was very angry that the Master did not take him with him, and now wants to show what he has learned during these years of hard training. For 10 long years he worked hard to achieve progress, and now his finest hour has come. Soon the carriage approached the mansion, and the Duke, who was not alone at all, came out of it, but together with his servant. Of course, both guys were very surprised to see what exactly God was holding in his arms. They immediately thought that the gentleman had kidnapped a woman from the capital, although it's even hard to believe. Max asked them to calm down and not think anything bad, because everything has its own explanation. As soon as they go inside the mansion, he will immediately explain everything and introduce everyone. He also warned in advance that the girl was mute, so he hoped for their understanding and education. He took a closer look at Richard and couldn't believe that this guy had grown so much. Apparently, he was even able to reach Carl's level. But so far, he has only changed externally, but internally, he remains the same cheerful and funny guy. It turned out that Carl had not arrived yet, although he was supposed to take a short route and appear at the mansion a long time ago. About 2 months ago, they saw each other for the last time, and Carl promised to arrive before his master. He's a very capable guy, so it's unlikely that anything bad happened, but it's possible that Carl is hiding from someone. Max is confident that such a talented warrior will be able to cope with any situation, especially since there are many soldiers next to him. The Duke was surprised about the state of the house. It turned out that all this happened because of Count de Paul, but Jeremy was also involved in this. As soon as the Duke went to war, Count de Paul immediately declared his righteous place as the head of the clan. He was very difficult to stop, especially after Max's long absence, so the second heir took his place. Apparently, he hoped that Max had already died in the war, but now the Duke has returned, and justice will prevail again. Only now, Richard remembered about the girl who couldn't speak at all, and tried to find out who she was. The Duke asked to take care of her, and not to offend her in any way, but rather to try to make friends with Lisa. Max promised her that he would definitely return soon, and in the meantime, she could relax and not worry about anything. Due to a long period of absence, Max completely forgot his home, especially after internal changes. A lot of interesting things are happening here now, and some individuals are not expecting the Duke's arrival at all. Soon the relatives finally met and pretended to be happy to see each other. Max tried to remain calm, although he understood that the conversation could quickly get out of control. He already knows that Count de Paul demanded the right to his property, and this happened as soon as Max left for the war. The Count worked on this process for a long time, and the land came into his possession. But Max is not ready to close his eyes to this. He ordered his uncle to leave immediately if he didn't want to get into serious trouble. Jeremy also confirmed that Max didn't know what was going on here, so the contract to own the house is illegal. The expiration date of the inheritance is not legal, so the entire estate must again return to Max's hands. Should immediately make a list of the damage the Count has done over the last decade. De Paul must pay all expenses and prepare to leave the territory immediately, even despite the family connection. Genealogy is a handy tool when it comes to asking for forgiveness. For some, the word family means nothing. Max became very angry and ordered his uncle to never come into his sight again. Otherwise, he will turn to the emperor and ask him to personally participate in resolving this family conflict. Soon he was forced to leave the house, and global changes began inside. It was very difficult to be here all this time, because the Count is a rather specific person. If this was any other mansion, it would have gone bankrupt long ago, because parties were constantly held here. Because of such a government, now a lot of work will fall on Max's shoulders. He needs to quickly patch up the holes in the budget. The Duke also decided to immediately notify his assistant that Lisa would sleep in the same room with him. Jeremy was very surprised. He reminded that there hadn't even been a ceremony yet, and the gentleman was in too much of a hurry to make decisions. Apparently, the mention of the ceremony was unnecessary, and the assistant immediately regretted his long tongue. Of course, Jeremy meant the wedding ceremony, because that's where he understood the whole situation. He had to explain that this would not happen, and Max was not going to marry, much less marry this girl. The Duke understands that he cannot make a captive maid his wife, because this is too much. He repeated several times that Lisa was his servant, but Jeremy still did not understand what was happening. But he knows the owner well, and knows that Max never wanted to share his bedroom with anyone, so all this is very strange. He also remembered exactly how Max got out of the carriage, and this whole puzzle came together into a single picture. The Duke only explained that he was going to take care of her until she got used to her new environment. Jeremy is ready to make a separate room for her, but Max said that this is not necessary and there is no need to rush. After that, he got angry and ordered his assistant to immediately stop talking about Lisa. He doesn't want anyone to poke their nose into his personal affairs and give him a million pieces of advice that he didn't ask for. Apparently, the Duke has changed, has become more sensitive, but nevertheless still remains very tough. Lisa will have to cope with the envy of others, because special treatment can turn into poison and poison her life. Meanwhile, Richard walked with her along the central alley and enjoyed the beautiful weather. He examined the new maid and tried to unravel her secret. How exactly she captivated the Duke of Warren. She looked carefully at Richard and said that he was very similar to his master. This greatly surprised the knight, for whom the mere comparison with a lion on the battlefield is considered something unimaginable. He also dreams of becoming a national hero, but he is still very far from such achievements. After that, he heard Lisa calling Max the owner, and thought that it sounded rather strange. At their first meeting, it seemed that this girl was receiving special treatment from the Duke, but apparently she was really a servant. If you ask too many personal questions, problems may arise, but you cannot hide your interest. Richard finds out that Max saved Lisa, and that's how she didn't meet. It happened a few months ago. He saved her life several times, proved himself to be a true hero, and then decided to keep her as his servant. Richard listened to all these stories with delight, and did not even suspect that all this time he was secretly being watched. Max was just passing by, but couldn't tell me to pay attention to such a lively dialogue between his charges. He also noticed their hand touches. This immediately caught his eye. His calm face immediately changed. He began to look more stern and even aggressive. Richard immediately noticed that the owner was approaching him, and he even tensed a little at that moment. After a few seconds, he relaxed and smiled again, as if driving away all disturbing thoughts. The only problem is that he didn't imagine it at all. Max actually looked incredibly worried. He approached, and without even paying attention to Richard, he immediately went to Lisa, but still with a cold look. Only after that did he pay attention to the knight, and a rather interesting plan quickly arose in his head. He recalled that sparring had not taken place between them for a long time, and tonight this needed to be corrected. Richard is a very good-natured and cheerful guy. He did not pay any attention to the context of this sentence. That's why he was happy and said that he would be happy to show everything he was capable of tonight. Finally, Lisa waved her hand at him, smiled, and seemed to indicate that she would be glad to see him again. The Duke immediately noticed this gesture and thought seriously. It was clear that all this caused him great discomfort. He decided to find out what she thought about Richard. Did she like him? And why did they communicate? The girl replied that this guy was a good knight and very similar to Max, but her answer was unlikely to satisfy him. He reminded her that she must uphold his honor and never hold the hand of a stranger again. Thus, the incident was quickly resolved. Lisa smiled again and said that this would not happen again. She tried to remember all these rules that made her happy, because she felt that she now belonged to him. Returning to the estate, they noticed strange people waiting for their carriages near the entrance. Max said that these people imagined themselves to be masters while he was gone, but now they no longer need to worry. He has already solved this problem and does not read them with his family at all, because they have nothing in common except blood. Sometimes he looks at them with hatred and realizes that they look worse than strangers. Until this moment, Lisa had always considered family members to be special people, even despite her difficult childhood. Even though her mother had to live in a separate house because of her, she still told her every time how much she loved her. Therefore, it always seemed to her that in other families, everyone was devoted to each other. But Max explained how everything really was. He said that what is important is not that power flows from the same blood, but your relationship to each other. Responsibility always brings problems, but it also strengthens relationships and makes them better. The duties of the Duke were always his duty, and therefore he took up too much energy. Now everything is changed, because he consciously took responsibility for Lisa, and he likes it. Although he cannot give everything she wants, he knows how pleased she is when he hugs and kisses her. Now it is becoming increasingly difficult for him to restrain himself, but he has not yet paid attention to new problems. Rumors have already spread around the estate. People quickly notice strange things and begin to discuss them furiously. Almost everyone in this house already knows that Lisa constantly sits in the owner's room. Everyone is trying to learn something new about this whole situation and get at least some information. It is not entirely clear whether the Duke deliberately ignores all this or does not notice at all due to his love blindness. In any case, for now, it does not cause him any trouble, and he is enjoying the moment. After lunch, we decided to go outside to get some exercise, especially in such excellent weather. A sparring took place between Richard and Max, and it did not end very well for the young talent. He missed a huge number of blows and was helpless, just like in the past. Richard doesn't quite understand what his fault is. He clearly feels that the Duke hated him during the sparring. Jeremy came out to support his comrade, but today he also looks unwell. Apparently this is due to new rules and changes in order. He still has a lot of work to do. Now no one is hiding that the Duke has changed and behaves a little strange, especially when he brings a girl with him. Formally, there is nothing wrong with this, but in fact it looks strange, because she is mute and is only a servant. There is clearly a special relationship between them. If this is true, then the situation could lead to serious problems. They sleep on the same bed, eat together, and it looks like Miss doesn't work at all. It's even hard to imagine a servant with such privileges. Perhaps this is some kind of daughter of the Emperor that Max is hiding, but so far there are no answers to all these questions. It's best to keep your mouth shut and not discuss the Duke, because if they find out about it, there will be problems. Max left somewhere, along with Lisa, a few hours ago, and still hasn't returned home. In the meantime, now we have an amazing opportunity to observe the lives of other people. Sister Lisa, along with her father, were able to escape their inevitable fate at the last moment and survive. Apparently, this is not enough to feel happy, because their lives have turned upside down. Now they have to constantly suffer and humiliate themselves in order to earn money for food. Sometimes it's hard and scary, and you get the feeling that it will never end. My father constantly repeats that you need to pull yourself together and move forward, but sometimes it is incredibly difficult. Now, Kira is finally beginning to understand how her sister felt all this time. Suffering and all-consuming loneliness are a terrible feeling that tears you apart from the inside. The sisters saw each other for the first time on the day of Liza's mother's death, and then a serious scandal broke out. The girls were very young, but nevertheless, they remembered that difficult day very well. When her mother died, Liz had no support or support left at all. From that day on, she almost always cried. Then Kira did not understand that this was a sister from another mother. But even if she had understood, it would not have changed her relationship. She would continue to avoid meeting with Lisa, although she herself could not fully explain to you the reason for these feelings. Since childhood, she remembered very well that her sister constantly cried, sometimes even for no reason. Once she even remembered how Lisa smiled while looking at her, but there were only a few positive memories. One autumn day, they met while Lisa was crying in the annex near the main house. That day, they talked for the first time. And probably for the first time, they realized how much they were alike. Yet, despite their physical similarity, their fates were opposite. Then, Kira was very angry that no one told her sister about the special women's days when blood appears. She asked her sister to calm down and decided to help, although at that moment she behaved rather harshly. This is probably due to the fact that there was a big barrier between them that they both needed to overcome. Then in Kira, for the first time, I saw her sister smiling. Before that, she had only noticed tears in her eyes. Her facial expression was somehow awkward, as if she was smiling for the first time at the sight of another person. I wanted to feel sorry for her and talk, but Kira was afraid that her parents might find out about this. Only now she realized that from that very day, she began to feel sorry for Lisa, because she realized that this was her younger sister. Now she really regrets that they left this little child, but she so needed support. The life of the Count and his daughter has changed dramatically. Now they themselves are forced to serve the others. If someone had told them about this before, they probably would not have believed these tales. Approaching the table with the guests, Kira saw a familiar pattern, which meant a sign of the enemy. The Imperial Knights came to eat and rest a little. The main thing is to behave calmly and not be nervous. Kira immediately realized that she should not attract attention. Otherwise, she would quickly be recognized. She acted casually and tried to remain unnoticeable, but at that moment, her hand was grabbed. It was Carl, the same leopard guy who serves the Duke, and should have returned home a long time ago. The girl was immediately seized with horror. She thought that she had been recognized and mentally prepared for death. Carl was very angry. He said that the girl should be next to her master and not here. Kira immediately apologized and asked to let her go, although Carl was sure that she could not talk. Apparently, everyone has already guessed that the leopard confused her with Lisa. This is not surprising, because they are incredibly similar. This whole situation threw her out of balance, but Kira tried to control her emotions and calm down. She asked the guest to call her when he was ready to order, and immediately left. It was at this moment that Carl turned to the girl again and asked her to wait a little. It was clear that this whole situation made a serious impression on him. His face immediately changed. The leopard approached the girl and began to eagerly peer into her face, and especially her eyes. Of course, he saw that he and Lisa looked alike, and the problem was that they were very similar, and it looked strange. Based on his uniform, Kira quickly guessed that standing in front of her was an Imperial Knight who served under Max Warren. Judging by his words, Max is now with a person who is very similar to her, that is, with Lisa. All this time, Kira was sure that her sister was dead, but now there is almost no doubt about the opposite. Let's leave Cyrus with the leopard for a while and return to the Duke's main house. All this time, he is not separated from his servant at all, and today he decided to provide her with a salary. He handed over a bag of money and said that here was the amount for all 3 months of her work in his house. Of course, Lisa was very surprised. She doesn't understand at all what to do with this money. No one has ever given her anything in her life. I don't even know how to handle finances. Max tried to explain to her that she could buy anything she wanted or save money for something more. The girl was so confused that she immediately said that she wanted to give all these gold coins to her owner. This couldn't help but bring a smile to his face. He was pleased to hear it, but it was her money, and she had to spend it herself. There is no point in giving back what he just handed over on his own, because it is completely unfair. Lisa thought for a while and said that now she wants to buy a gift for Max with this money. At that moment, the smile immediately disappeared from his face. He became thoughtful, as if he had heard something very serious. She began asking him about potential gifts that he had long wanted to buy for himself. Max got up from the table and said that he would be glad to get anything, and that the main thing for him was attention. Now he is interested in something completely different and wants to finally smell her body again. The Duke approached the girl and greedily pressed his lips into her, as if he couldn't get enough of her all the time. After this, it became clear that they did not need clothes, but suddenly they needed to go to bed. They were not at all embarrassed by the fact that the servants could hear them, probably because the lovers do not care about the world around them. After that, Lisa went outside to look for opportunities to buy a gift. There she met a large number of merchants. These masters of manipulation forced her to buy a lot of unnecessary things. Lisa was upset that she spent a lot of money and didn't buy anything important. But at that moment, a young man approached her. This guy noticed that her basket was very heavy and immediately offered her friendly help. Lisa remembered her master's rules well, and therefore immediately turned away from the stranger. Apparently this guy is not going to let her go so easily, and he is very determined. Lisa was very lucky that Richard was passing by, saw what was happening, and immediately intervened in the incident. With all his appearance, he showed that he would not allow anyone to offend this girl, and was ready to destroy anyone who looked badly at her. This unknown guy immediately got scared and started running away. It was the best decision in the current situation. Thanks to a pen and a piece of paper, Lisa was able to explain that she came here to choose a gift for her owner. Richard couldn't believe that the owner really sent the girl here without any accompaniment. If you look more closely at everything that is happening, you can understand that Lisa is not alone. All this time, Max was nearby, and being in the shadows, he watched her and controlled the situation. Richard realized that there was a very unusual relationship between these two, and for some reason, this made him happy. He decided to personally help the girl so that she could choose the best gift, because he knows the Duke very well. Lisa will be incredibly happy to feel supported, because I must admit that her ideas for a gift are not at all interesting. Towards evening, she finally returned home, accompanied by Richard. Everything went quite calmly. No one pestered her anymore, and she brought home a lot of vegetables and fruits bought at the market. Max looked quite thoughtful, as if something was bothering him, and he was constantly thinking about something. He immediately realized that the traders skillfully manipulated the girl so as not to sell her unnecessary goods. He looked carefully into her eyes, as if expecting that she had prepared something special for him. A few moments later, Lisa took out a small book and said that it was her gift for caring. There was also a small note saying, "Thank you, it all looked pretty nice." Max smiled slightly and said that he would read this book with pleasure, and also thanked him for the gift. It's hard to believe now, but a few words of gratitude were something special for Lisa and made her happy. Max also said that fruits will not go to waste in the house, because they can always be used beneficially. Taking Lisa on his lap, the Duke told her that he would teach her very interesting games with fruits. The next day, early in the morning, he went to work, because he really had a lot to do lately. Max constantly paid attention to the book given by Lisa, and felt warmth in his heart. If you look closely at his face, you will notice that he smiled from time to time, looking at the book. Richard stood nearby, in a rather strange position, and did not understand how much longer he needed to remain in this state. Max said that as soon as the right moment comes, he will free his assistant from this difficult position. A guy who dreams of becoming a commander should not give up at the first difficulties. As soon as Richard heard this motivational speech, he immediately smiled and said that he could stand like that for an eternity. Max is especially attentive today, which is why he immediately noticed a special item on Richard's belt. He guessed that this item was a gift from Lisa. But why did Richard attach it to his chest? The knight replied that he wanted to emphasize eternal loyalty and gratitude to the ruler. That is why he plans to wear this item on his chest for the rest of his life. It was quite strange to hear, because Richard talks about loyalty to the ruler, but Lisa grabs the gift. It feels like his brain consists of nothing but muscles. So Max got angry and kicked the knight out of his office. Now the time has come for him to decide what to do with Liza, because this thought has been sitting in his head for a long time. He warned her that she was his personal servant, but usually personal servants also deal with outside affairs. Of course, Lisa is not ready for this, because she has not even learned to write yet, and it would be strange to demand more from her. Max wants her to always be in his sight, within reach, Perhaps it's just a jealous guy's fear that his crush might move on to someone else as her world expands. There may be a place in her heart for someone other than him, and this thought excites his entire consciousness. It must be admitted that the Duke is incredibly scared. He seems to be denying reality and does not want to acknowledge it. He still has a lot to think about this and decide for himself exactly what to do. He can keep Liza as his slave, or he can give her freedom, because a loved one should not be a slave. The next morning, Lisa went to the Duke's office to continue her studies. Lately, she has been practicing writing almost constantly in order to improve her technique. Before coming here, her main occupations were classic servant tasks, but now everything has changed. Now she dresses Max in clothes that someone else chose and learns to write while the owner works. At night they go to bed together, but that's all. And it's as if this change doesn't suit her. She doesn't even notice the quiet glances of the other maids that are directed in her direction. Lisa is very naive, and oddly enough, she wants to work just like everyone else and not stand out at all. She decided to personally contact Max and ask him when she could continue her work. The girl looked very thoughtful and tense, but nevertheless made it clear what she wanted. The Duke replied that he would teach her when the right moment came, but did not specify when exactly to expect this. Her desire is commendable, but right now there is no need to increase the number of her responsibilities. And she's still not sure that she's benefiting from her work now. Apparently she doesn't fully understand everything that's happening. Max decided to stroke her hair and say that she was very dear to him, which means she should receive a reward. He took out from his pocket a very beautiful necklace, which was obviously incredibly expensive. Lisa was surprised and said that, for her, this gift was undeserved. But the Duke was sure of the opposite. He can give her exactly as much as she wants, so it's better not to worry about the cost of gifts. Oddly enough, even after such warm words, she looked upset, as if she didn't deserve all this. Lisa felt that she would not be able to repay, but nevertheless, she did not show her true feelings and kept everything to herself. This moment, when she was slightly sad. For Max, she turned out to be very sweet and especially beautiful. He couldn't resist, took a step towards her, and started kissing her right on his desk. At that moment, he was informed that a guest should come to him, although today he was not expecting anyone at all. Max said that he was not going to accept unexpected visits and asked to send the guest back. It turned out that the daughter of Duke Lightman came to him, and this completely changes the whole situation. Apparently, she is very arrogant to come here without permission, but nevertheless, the meeting must still take place. With a dissatisfied face, the Duke was forced to accept the Rhine. Although of course he wanted to be alone with Lisa. It was clear how scared this little naive girl became, as if she was afraid of Duke Lightman's daughter. Soon Jeremy let the guest in and she appeared at the entrance. Rain looked quite confident, however, as always. This girl knows that she is incredibly beautiful and also knows that all the men around her dream of her. This was probably the case before, but now everything has changed, and someone has appeared who doesn't care about her beauty. Max immediately greeted her. Well, he remained calm and even, a little insultingly serious. Rain said that she came on an important matter and did not want strangers to hear their conversation. It was clear that she was hinting at Liza, and in every possible way wanted to make the girl leave the room. These words touched a nerve with Max, and so he decided to respond even harsher and postpone their conversation to another day. He showed in every possible way that he was very busy and did not want to interrupt his conversation with Lisa. With all his appearance, Max tried to show that he would not allow anyone to offend this girl, not even the Duke's daughter. Rain turned red with anger, her eyes became bloodshot, and her heart began to beat twice as fast. Only a little later she calmed down, said goodbye to the Duke, and left his office with her head held high. It is still difficult for her to understand why Max's attitude does not change. He still treats her too coldly. It seems that the Duke of Warren found out that the aristocrats sent him an assassin. This is hard to believe, because a killer with extreme training would never reveal himself. It feels like he found out that Rain wanted to kill his servant, but that would have been the worst option. Herzog is not a fool at all, so Rain is sure that he will marry the girl who suits his status. She is the only one who matches this status, and therefore has no doubt about future victory. Soon, Max received news that another of his servants, the leopard Karl, had arrived. The Duke got angry and tried to find out why Carl was absent for so long, but apparently he had serious reasons for this. Max immediately noticed that his warrior returned not alone, but together with a beautiful girl who reminded him of someone. Carl understands that he acted unprofessionally, but tries to calm his master. He looked carefully at Max and immediately noticed that his body was shrouded in Lisa's aura. The beast man immediately smells such smells, and of course, Max could not hide this secret from him. Carl quickly guessed everything. He understood why Max forbade him to see Lisa and what had happened recently. He wanted to continue the conversation, but Kira intervened, who took a confident step forward and greeted the Duke. She apologized for being extremely tactless and shameless, but there are serious reasons for this. She asks to be given the opportunity to meet her younger sister, at least once. It's not difficult to guess what exactly was happening at that moment in Max's soul. He was shocked and seemed speechless. Soon Carl was free. He was reprimanded, but nevertheless, Max was not too strict with his assistant. In the corridor of the estate, he met Richard and Jerry, although the leopard did not recognize the young knight at all. Only a little later, he remembered that the last time he saw this guy was when he was just a child. Richard asked for a little sparring back then, but now he has grown up and turned into a real man. In 10 years, nature changes completely, and of course, Richard also changed and became stronger. Jeremy intervened in the conversation and asked Carl to have a private conversation with him. Apparently, this was something important. Apparently, he wants to talk about the relationship between the Duke and Miss Lisa, because this relationship is disturbing the entire estate. As soon as Carl entered the office, he immediately smelled the scent of Liz. He would not confuse it with anything in the world. The smell was not that strong. It felt like it had been building up over several days. Carl warned Jeremy that it was better not to separate the Duke and Lisa, because it was a bad idea, even if he looks quite calm. We must not forget that the Duke was broken by a long war. If you offend someone close to him, towards whom he feels a mania of control and protection, the consequences will be dire. Lisa is the first person he allows to be close to him, so she is rightfully considered special. The Duke allowed the girl to meet her older sister. In truth, he had no right to refuse such a request. It was clear that he was doing this without a smile on his face. Apparently, the appearance of his sister could disrupt his plans. Jeremy had no intention of ruining this union, but he is worried about the fact that their relationship is going beyond boundaries. Carl cannot know about all of his master's intentions, because it is not clear what is going on in Max's head. They can only trust and watch from the sidelines, hoping for the best outcome. Kira stayed overnight at the estate. In the evening, she went outside to get some fresh air. The girl tried to understand what exactly she needed to do, and constantly replayed the meeting with her sister in her head. Lisa met her with a sad face, as if ashamed of something, and afraid to look her sister straight in the eyes. During this time, she endured many difficulties and terrible things, but found the strength to escape loneliness. Lisa escaped from the darkness of the dungeon and met Max, who helped her finally feel human warmth. It's even difficult for her to hide the fact that she is incredibly happy, but when she sees her sister, she looks a little sad. Kira is glad that Lisa is doing well, but she came here to tell her something important. She came to say that Lisa was not at all to blame for the fact that she was born, no matter how strange it may sound. My father constantly repeated that a girl like Lisa should not have been born, and that her existence was terrible. Kira believes that this is not true at all. Her sister should not regret anything, because being born is not a sin at all. Of course, Lisa thinks differently, because she knows how many problems she caused her mother and her father's family. Kira knows that they deserve forgiveness, but she came here to apologize. She is ready to beg for forgiveness, but Lisa doesn't need it. She wants no one to feel guilty. If she had not been left alone that day, she would never have met her owner, and all this time, she would have continued to be unhappy. Everything that happened up to this point was a payment for future success, and now she is truly happy. It was difficult for Kira to listen to all this. Tears appeared in her eyes, and her breathing quickened. She wants to apologize for turning away from her younger sister, for not helping her in a difficult moment. All this time, she felt within herself remorse and a sense of guilt that was killing her from the inside. Kira was sure that her sister hated her and would drive her away at the first opportunity. It turned out that everything is just the opposite. Lisa loves her older sister, and is ready to accept her into her arms. This sentimental conversation cannot leave anyone indifferent. It is always nice to watch a family reunion. That evening, Lisa and Max had a serious conversation regarding the latest incidents. The Duke wants to know how the meeting with his older sister went, and whether everything ended well. Lisa said that everyone considered her birth a mistake, and even she herself was sure that it was her fault that she was born. The sister came to tell her the opposite, that she was happy to have such a sister, and asked for forgiveness for her sins. Apparently, Max is not happy with this dialogue. He believes that such actions cannot be forgiven only after several apologies. Beautiful words can erase all the suffering that Lisa suffered in the past. If she wants, he can do everything to ensure that her family never appears in her life again. He was surprised, but Lisa replied that everything was fine, and now she was happy thanks to him. She is ready to forgive her family for all the difficulties that she had to go through, because resentment has no meaning. There is no point in keeping a lot of evil and bile in your soul. It is easier to forgive and calmly move forward. This girl is incredibly naive and noble. She is pure like an angelic soul, and it's hard not to admire this. Looking at her, Max was sure that Lisa was still living in her own cage, from which she could not get out. She lives in a mental prison, and only he is considered special. Only he is real happiness for her. And Lisa said that she wants to do something good for her sister, so that Kira also feels happy. Looking at her beautiful lips and big eyes, the Duke again wanted to touch her body. He asked her to forget about others and focus on each other, because that is what matters to them. Was it difficult for Lisa to understand who she is to the Duke if he treats her in a special way? She is not sure that she can expect at least the slightest that there really is a special relationship between them. Max asked her to never cry without him again in her life, and to always know that he was ready to support her. It was at these moments that Kira was on the street and trying to sort out her inner experiences. She is trying to figure out what to do next, especially after losing her home, family, and even status. The feeling of loss and sadness from the loss of her family, as well as disappointment in herself, makes her suffer. She is even more worried about remorse. Sometimes she even thought about suicide. Now she had finally met her younger sister, and their personal conversation ended the suffering in her soul. At that moment, she looked down and saw Carl. Apparently, he also couldn't sleep late at night. This warrior looked at Cyrus in a special way. Something flashed in his eyes, something elusive and beautiful. He quickly approached the girl, as if not noticing the distance that was between them. Kira was confused and tried to understand what he wanted. She didn't know what to think. Carl recalled that she was the first to call him, but apparently this did not happen for a conversation, so he can return home. Carl immediately realized that the girl wanted to leave and did not feel at all comfortable here. Kira may be late, but in any case, she is grateful to Carl for the opportunity to meet her sister. Now she must decide her future herself, although now it seems to her that her prospects are bad. An aristocrat should face the death penalty because of the conquered side. At least this has always been the case in the past. Carl can't answer all her questions, but it feels like she can avoid a death sentence. Kira didn't even think about it. She had already forgotten that she could really get a chance at a new life. Carl is upset because he understands that this girl will most likely leave, although perhaps he would like her to stay. As soon as she leaves this house, she will be immediately eliminated, and they will do it secretly. There is no doubt about it. Carl is determined. He does not want to allow such a result, and is ready to go to extreme measures for this. He took a step forward and grabbed her hand, but did it very gently, as if he were taking his girlfriend's hand. He reminded her that she had absolutely nowhere to go, and therefore it was better to stay here, because she would be welcome here. Carl looked straight into her eyes with a mysterious look. Probably only a blind person would not have seen sympathy on his part. After that, he bit her hand. He did it as gently as possible. Like a true aristocrat, Kira immediately became angry and hit him in the chest. If she wants to run away, they will quickly find her, because the bite left a mark. Carl is ready to retreat, but only if Kira refuses to leave this place. She shouldn't try to run away from her own feelings of guilt, especially towards her younger sister. For Lisa, her older sister is still part of the family she always missed in her previous life. Apparently, Carl doesn't understand at all what the members of the Shack family did to Lisa, and how much she suffered in the past. After this, it's even difficult to call Kira her family, because she doesn't deserve this title at all. Kira tried to understand what Carl was offering her and found out that he wanted to persuade her to one side. He asks her to become a real big sister, at least from now on. If Lisa really wants this, then Kira must meet her halfway. This conversation ended. Carl went about his personal affairs and left Cyrus alone with himself. She must think and make a difficult decision about what to do next. All this time, her younger sister has been in her shadow, but now the situation could turn upside down, and Kira will be in her sister's shadow. Soon, Carl told his master about everything that had happened, and Max was not at all happy about this news. Carl is ready to accept any punishment, but now he is sure that Kira wants to be with her sister. It's strange because all this time she was doing great without her little sister, and now, suddenly, everything has changed. The Duke is clearly unhappy. Apparently, Carl knew that he would not agree to this, and therefore first went to talk with Kira. The leopard understood perfectly well that the Duke would not be able to refuse her. Apparently, he planned to control Max using Lisa and her sister. Lisa said that she wanted to completely get rid of the past and remain happy. Everyone has their own personal understanding of happiness, and Max believes that she knows what will be best for her. He decided not to cause a scandal and allowed his older sister to be hired as a maid on his estate. But he will no longer allow anyone to cross this line, and if the situation repeats, Carl will be severely punished. As soon as the leopard left the owner's room, he immediately smiled and sighed with relief. He was prepared for the worst, but everything ended quite well, although some thoughts still linger in his head. He considers his disobedience to the master's order strange, since he wanted to keep Cyrus close to him. It is unlikely that they will thank him, but in any case, events in this estate are unfolding in the most amazing way. The next morning on the street, one could again find beautiful weather and bright rays of the sun. Also, from the very morning, one very nice and bright person was walking in the central garden of the estate. Rain was waiting for the Duke to come out to meet her. She had been here for several days, but had not yet communicated with the owner. The girl remembers Lisa all the time, because this servant is constantly near the Duke. This is very strange, because the other servants cannot easily approach this special person. It's hard to believe that Duke Warren really fell in love with his stupid maid. This sounds incredibly strange, especially considering that this maid can't even talk. There is no doubt that this will become just a passing hobby, but Rain takes it as a personal insult. A little later, she saw this girl in the garden and decided not only to approach her, but also to push her in the back. It looked like a gesture of hatred and dominance, and this gesture was quite strong. Because the girl fell, Rain made a surprised expression on her face and apologized, saying that she didn't notice anyone next to her at all. She immediately took out a handkerchief and threw out the blood from the lamb hand, still not showing her true intentions. Up close, this girl seemed even more pitiful. Apparently, it's hard to even call her a serious competitor. Rain is not even going to take her handkerchief because Lisa stained it with her blood. That is, she made the handkerchief unusable. Meanwhile, Lisa looked at Rain with admiration. She seemed to her like a bright princess who had descended from heaven. There was not a single flaw in her, and it was clear that she was an ideal match for an alliance with the Duke. At this moment, Lisa was upset. It seemed obvious to her that the owner must fall in love with Rain. A few seconds later, someone shouted her name. It was a familiar voice that she immediately recognized. It turned out that it was her older sister, who had already taken on the maid's clothes. Oddly enough, but Kira, just for a few hours in the morning, was able to learn a lot of interesting things about this house. She knows that this girl's name is Rain Lightman. She is the daughter of the Duke, who is supposed to marry Warren. Also, everyone in this mansion knows that Lisa is a servant from a defeated country, sleeping next to the Duke. If Rain becomes the mistress of this house, she will definitely kick Lisa out, although it is possible that the Duke will do this earlier. After all, we must not forget that he led many countries to collapse and has enough intelligence to get rid of reproaches. He can clear his name of any problems in advance, and therefore Lisa should not relax. Now she stands precariously on her feet in a world strewn with lies, as if walking on a tightrope. She considers herself quite happy because she is next to her owner, and without even suspecting anything. Her naivety is dazzling, but she still shouldn't give her heart completely to the Duke. Although Lisa is very naive, she is not stupid at all and understands something in this life. The girl knows that in the future, she will have to interrupt her feelings for the owner because she is not suitable for the role of his wife. It's strange to hear, it's strange to understand that she loves him with all her heart, but knows that the end of this relationship is approaching. Even now, she remains a happy person, as if enjoying the moment and not worrying about the future. The Duke must know about her feelings, but it is not entirely clear what he expects from her and what he wants. It feels like he wants to play and leave her, despite the fact that he will break her heart. Perhaps he has a completely different plan, but so far only Duke Max Warren knows about it. Soon the Emperor's messenger arrived at the house and told about the delivery of awards for victory in the war. In addition to the already agreed-upon reward, Max will also receive a sword from the Emperor, who is the best on the continent. The sword is made of material. Emperors ask to hang it in their office as a symbol of counting and rank. The Crown Prince finished dealing with the remnants of the defeated people and also returned to the palace.